Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we actually have to talk about whiskey, because if your whiskey is counterfeit, a new tech may be able to help you discern this. This is actually really interesting. It's coming from the Smithsonian, and leave it to the Aussies to figure this one out. Their booze is awesome. Now here's what's going on. Even the most sophisticated connoisseur can sometimes still fall prey to fraud, which is basically a huge problem in the whiskey industry. And the link that the Smithsonian had to a New York Times article was actually really interesting. Apparently a $1,000 bottle of Colonel E.H. Taylor 4-grain was being sold in a wine store in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, but it was missing the standard cardboard tube. The strip stamp from the manufacturer was backwards. It was apparently counterfeit, and they essentially confirmed it with the maker of that specific whiskey. Cheap booze for $1,000 basically, and many people had already bought the bottle. It got pulled from the shelves, etc., etc., etc. But this is a huge problem, and I digress. Researchers at the University of Technology, Sydney, as I mentioned, in Australia, hope to change all of that with the development of an electronic nose that can identify different whiskey styles, brands, and origins by quote-unquote smelling samples. Now, according to the paper that they published on April 1st in the journal IEEE Sensors, the device is called NOS, that's N-O-S.E, and it was able to identify differences between 3 blended malt whiskeys and 3 single malt whiskeys made by Johnny Walker, Ardbeg, one of my favorites, Chivas Regal, and Macallan in less than 4 minutes. Now, the prototype was 100% accurate on the region, 96.15% accurate on the brand name, and 92.31% accurate on the style of the 6 whiskeys, as tested at basically an Australian trade show in 2019 as they were first developing this. Now, scientists also confirmed and technology's findings using basically the age-old time-of-flight mass spectrometry and two-dimensional gas chromatography, which are basically very time-consuming chemical tests that must be performed in a lab by a trained professional. NOS, however, is quick and relatively inexpensive, according to the research paper. Now, it's created to mimic the human olfactory system, so NOS has 8 gas sensors, which can, for lack of a better term, sniff a vial of whiskey. The device then evaluates each odor molecule it detects and then sends that data to a computer, where basically machine learning AI that's been trained to recognize whiskey characteristics essentially deciphers if it's what it is, if it's good or not, counterfeit, etc., etc. Now, electronic nose technology has been used previously to do things like stop illegal wildlife trafficking, assess wastewater treatment plant odors, identify cancer cells, and detect COVID-19, interestingly enough, among some more recent uses. Now, moving forward, nose not only has the potential to sniff out things like fraudulent alcohol, but it can also detect things like counterfeit wine, cognacs, expensive perfumes, according to essentially the statement. Now, it may also prove useful for detecting diseases and other medical applications, such as virtual noses before. And while whiskey in and of itself and fraudulent whiskey is a multi-million-dollar fraudulent business, obviously that's something that needs to be combated. Obviously, the practical applications for nose go way beyond just being able to sniff out various whiskeys and other alcohols into, a practical realm. So Australia, good on ya. Obviously, you guys have great beer. Your whiskeys, though, here we are. But I think this is a really good step forward for these kinds of things. And if you are into whiskey, you might want to look for an NOS.E device in the near future to make sure that what you are buying and paying a lot of money for is actually the real thing. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.